Fight Mike here. Today I'm going to be recapping UFC Shanghai, headlined by Johnny Walker and Zhang Mingyang, that took place yesterday. I'm going to be going through the entire card, starting with the early prelim opener. We got Uran Satibuldev versus Dr. Nergazhay. I went with Uran Satibuldev to get this one done by decision, and he got this one by first round submission. It was an Ezekiel choke from full guard. It was a very interesting submission to get. We don't see many. I think there's only been 5 in the UFC in total, but Uran just looked the much better fighter out there between him and Dr. Nergazhay. Dr. looked a bit too skittish on the feet. His formal part of defense was just leaning back, which is never a good sign. He would sort of just lean back and stick his arms out there, hoping that your punches would get mixed up in his arms. But in these heavier weight classes especially, you're going to get caught at the end of the punches, and he got caught, dropped, went for a takedown afterwards, and then got Kimura'd from bottom position, which Satibuldev was able to work until he got to top position, and then got an Ezekiel choke from full guard. But I do think that Uran Satibuldev looks pretty good in this fight, but I also think that Nergazhay may just not be very aware off bottom, because this is the second time in a row that he almost got Kimura'd from bottom position. He got Kimura'd from bottom position and finished by Brenson Ribeiro, but this one was as unimpressive, that he was able to get Kimura'd from bottom position yet again, reversed, and then put into an Ezekiel choke from full guard. I know that Uran's very long, so it's a bit easier for him to get that Ezekiel choke, but for Dr. Nergazhay, you'd think that he'd have the submission defense to be able to, at least the submission awareness, to know not to get caught in that Ezekiel choke. So it wasn't a very, it was an impressive win from Satibuldev, but I was not impressed with the loss of Dr. Nergazhay. I don't think that he's going to be a fantastic prospect for the light heavyweight division. Moving on to the next fight, that we've got Zhao Long versus Su Young Yu, sorry. Rounds 1 and 2, I thought were very, very close rounds. I thought that Su Young Yu not easily, but I thought that he slightly outpointed Zhao Long in those rounds. Round 3, though, Zhao Long won very easily from being just more active. Yu was going backwards the entire round. He wasn't really landing too much, and Zhao Long was pushing forward. He was yelling at him. He was emoting, doing the usual Zhao Long type tricks, but he was throwing a lot of strikes, Zhao Long, but he was missing big. And although he was dipping and ripping at points, I think that Su Young Yu was landing the more effective strikes across the first 2 rounds. It was very close, though, and the takedown defense of Zhao Long has to be brought up. He looked pretty good with that. He was definitely prepared for Su Young Yu. I just don't think he was prepared to have Su Young Yu being so sharp with his counters and with his defense, especially in those first 2 rounds. But on the last 10 seconds, they were both just throwing elbows at each other in the pocket. It was really entertaining. It was a good fight between the two of them. And I honestly think that both could be decent prospects moving forward, because I knew Zhao Long was going to be a good striker, but he surprised me in his takedown defense. And I knew that Su Young Yu was going to be a good grappler, but he surprised me in how slick his boxing was. So I was quite impressed with that. Moving on, though, we've got Yi Zha versus Weston Wilson. I picked Yi Zha to get this one done, and obviously he got it done by first round KO. He went out there and started landing instantly on Weston Wilson. He was getting caught with the straight left constantly. Weston Wilson fights with that karate type stance, but the thing is about Weston Wilson is that he doesn't really have an athletic bone in his body. So standing in that karate stance with his hands at his waist was always sort of like a recipe for disaster with anyone who steps through with combinations, and that's something that Yi Zha does very well. He stepped through in a couple of combinations, landing the straight left consistently as well. Landed it about 4 times, 4 out of 4 in the beginning of the fight. But then Weston Wilson just couldn't make the reasonable adjustment of picking his right hand up, and then got finished in round 1 by a straight left. You could see it happening from the second the fight started. Weston Wilson stands super upright. He leaves his hands at his waist, and he was just getting caught coming in every single time. Yi Zha, though, did better than both Joanderson Brito and Gene Silva, so it's a pretty impressive win from him there, but you kind of wonder whether Joanderson Brito and Gene Silva sort of played into how early this round 1 KO was. But Weston Wilson also could have just been sort of just discovered to be the sort of guy he is. He's not the most skilled fighter we've all ever seen in our life. But moving on to the next fight, this was a shock. Michel Pereira versus Kyle Dorcas. Like any smart male with a brain, I picked Kyle Dorcas to get this one done by first round KO. I didn't pick Kyle Dorcas to get this one done. I picked Michelle Pereira to get this one done by first round KO. No one really expected how this one to be a Kyle Dorcas first round KO. Even people picking Dorcas were saying that he would have to go through a rough first round before winning. But I think that Michelle Pereira is regressing. Like, people are going to call this cope saying, like, oh, Michelle Pereira is not that bad. Like, Michelle Pereira just got outskilled. But it's not really true, is it? Because you're seeing Michelle Pereira in the first round of this fight. Maybe you just underestimated Kyle Dorcas, but he's fighting with his hands at his waist. And usually when he fights like that, he's ultra aware. He's pulling away constantly. And he's sort of making it very difficult for his opponents. But he kind of just stood there, not expecting Kyle Dorcas to throw anything with heat on it, and got finished by, I think it was an overhand right. And the thing is, this could also be another one of these circumstances where these MMA guys come in against a southpaw and it's almost like they've never trained or fought against a southpaw in their life. But it could be one of those situations. But I think that Michelle Pereira, from what I've heard from like guys like Money Moicano, guys like Gilbert Burns, they all talk about Michelle Pereira like he genuinely doesn't train. So I wouldn't be surprised if he is regressing in skill, because usually you have to go through a round of war to get, like, to beat Michelle Pereira. But in this fight, he had literally 3 body kicks, and then he was like, yeah, I've won this fight, and was just sort of like flowing on the outside with his hands below his waist. Like, it was just such a poor performance from him. And all the aura that Michelle Pereira had as like a first round finisher is gone. No one thinks of him like that. People are going to look at him like a glass cannon that's only got 40 seconds to finish you anyway. But I'm happy with the result. I'm happy to see Kyle Dorcas doing well. After that loss to Roman Dolidze, getting his face completely rearranged, it's kind of good to see him back in the UFC and on a winning streak now. And the comeback is insane. It's a good story of a comeback. It's similar to the Dominic Reyes comeback, where he breaks so many bones in his face that you think he's done forever, but comes back stronger than ever. Good win from Kyle Dorcas. He looks really sharp out there. Moving on, we've got Rong Zhu versus Austin Hubbard. I went with Rong Zhu by 29-28 decision. And it was a pretty close decision between the two of them. Round 1 was pretty close. Hubbard started fast and looked pretty sharp early. The round could go either way, but I gave it to Rong Zhu just for pushing Hubbard back for most of the round. Round 2, Rong Zhu got taken down early, but he started to sort of warm into the fight a little bit. Hubbard came on strong halfway through, though. He's landing some good body shots and defending the right hand a lot better. But round 3, Rong Zhu won the round back. Picked up the pace, he was countering much better, chasing down a tired Austin Hubbard, and he was able to get the decision, 29-28. He looked really good in this fight, Rong Zhu did, and Austin Hubbard, he is a tough out for anyone. We talk about Austin Hubbard like he's a bottom feeder, but he's genuinely pretty good. Very hard to finish. He's got good defense. I was saying that coming into it. And he's just like a tricky customer. He's always going to give you problems no matter what. And I think that Rong Zhu put out a good performance. I don't know if he's ever going to be a top 15 opponent, though. Moving on to the next fight, though, we've got Charles Johnson versus Lona Kavanagh. Charles Johnson's done it again. Early, I was very worried that Kavanagh was going to be, going to smoke Charles Johnson in the fight. But he started off looking like a flyweight Fiziev with some nasty explosive body kicks early. He caught Johnson early as well with a hook that landed flat on his eye. Pardon me, but Lona's kicks early especially were keeping Johnson busy. It looked like he was really giving Johnson a lot of troubles with the speed as well. Even the boxing speed, he was a lot faster than Charles Johnson in the beginning of this fight. But Charles started to clinch a lot more. He was pushing for takedowns, forcing scrambles from Lona Kavanagh. And what Charles did really well in round 1, even if he lost the round super clearly, he made Kavanagh work the entire time. Even if he was getting caught cleanly, he was pushing forward straight afterwards. He was throwing some flicking body kicks. He was making sure that he wasn't getting completely outdone by Kavanagh. And even when he would get hit by a shot, he would move forward straight after to sort of smother the pressure and smother all the feeling that Lona Kavanagh had in the fight. He sort of was trying to big brother Kavanagh early, trying to show him like, hey, you can't do anything with your punches against me. I'm going to come back stronger and better. And you saw the inexperiencedness from Kavanagh late in round one because you could see he was winning the round very easily, but he was throwing 100% power. Even when Johnson was evading the shots, he would throw like a 5-punch combination and Johnson would evade the first like 4 and get hit like a quarter of the last punch. And at that point, you're like, if you're an experienced guy, you're not throwing all those shots with 100% power, especially when you've won the round. And especially with a guy that's never been finished like Charles Johnson. He's always been known as like an unfinishable guy, so you can't really be pushing that hard against him. I also think beginning of round 2, Charles Johnson did a very good job forcing the wrestling. Kavanagh pushing for the guillotine twice in a row in round 2 probably gassed his arms further than they should have been. He pushed for a couple of takedowns after that as well and noticeably looked way more tired. And instantly from that point, you could see the bad habits of Lona Kavanagh sort of seep into his games. You could see he was throwing everything with 100% power. He had his hands at his waist. He wasn't feinting his way in. And he was getting pushed back a lot more in that round 2 by Charles Johnson. And Johnson was just starting to outland him. You could see he was shooting some bad takedowns from far out, just making Lona Kavanagh work. And then as he started to see Lona Kavanagh get tired, he stopped shooting the takedowns and started only throwing his long punches, throwing some more body kicks, a fair few teeps as well. And it was just a really smart performance from Charles Johnson. You can't keep giving these prospects, especially these smaller, young prospects, Charles Johnson straight away because he's been fighting these guys for a long time and he's getting his timing on him a lot earlier in the fight. And Charles Johnson's just a very difficult style if you're a prospect to beat because if you're a prospect, usually you're used to crumbling people, but Charles Johnson's an crumbleable guy. He's just impossible to make him quit. And Lona Kavanagh almost looked like he was going out there with a Fiziev game plan of making him quit, which is not really what you should do with Charles Johnson. Charles isn't going to quit. You sort of have to just out-skill Charles Johnson or out-point him or out-control time him to be able to get the win on him. And Charles, at the end of the fight, didn't look tired at all. He was still loading into it. And to be honest, I need to see Charles Johnson in a 5-rounder. I would love to see him. I need to see him get to the top of that division. Even if he can get to like an Apex main event, I need to see him in a 5-rounder. But he caught, I don't even think I spoke about the finish yet, but he caught Lona Kavanagh coming backwards as Lona Kavanagh literally had his like hands below his waist, moving backwards in range completely, where Charles Johnson just catches him with a lead hook, I think, over the top, completely sleeping Kavanagh out cold. Kavanagh needs some time off after this as well, but it was a fantastic performance from Charles Johnson in this fight. And I will say, Charles Johnson, if he's shutting down all of these prospects, I don't really think that it's such a bad loss for Lona Kavanagh. Like, if Lona Kavanagh was getting shut down by like a Jafel Filho, then I would be sort of like, yeah, that's a bit of a fraud check. But I can't really call a Charles Johnson loss a fraud check at any point in anyone's career anymore. He's too good of a fighter to be fraud checking people. But I will say as well, though, Lona Kavanagh should have got like the Alan Nascimento test before getting the Lona Kavanagh test. Like, we saw him come up against short notice Felipe Dos Santos. Short notice Jose Ochoa. He needed these tests before just jumping him into a grizzled vet like Charles Johnson, who honestly, I think Charles Johnson should be ranked like number 12, number 13 in the division. But moving on to the next fight, that we've got Maheshate versus Gage Young. This was a good fight. I did think Maheshate won the rounds 1 and 3. I can understand why they gave round 1 to Gage Young, just because Maheshate got hurt in the first round, but it was more off balance. But I thought he won round 1 and 3, but both guys showed a lot of chin, a lot of heart, and neither was sort of able to put a stamp on the victory, so it's like no use complaining about either guy winning. But I think it was a decent fight. Both guys are probably going to get unraveled by higher levels of opposition, but I think that they both got a few too little wrinkles in their games. They're a little bit straight with their attacks. They don't really deviate from the 1-2s, the leg kicks too much. But it was still a decent fight. It was a fun one. There's not really much to break down in that one. There's a lot to break down for this one, though. Taliake Nuraji versus Kiefer Crosby. This was a very good performance from Nuraji, but a terrible illegal knee against Kiefer Crosby. It was like a flatline KO with the illegal knee. And Nuraji reversed an early takedown. He got him down to the ground, hit him with a bunch of elbows. And on the get-up, Kiefer Crosby tried to get up and got hit with a knee from next year. Like, it was a brutal, brutal knee. And it almost looks like it flatline KO'd Kiefer Crosby. But Kiefer's a warrior and wanted to keep going. So he gives himself no time to recover, barely a minute. And then goes back out there and gets ground and pound TKO'd straight away by Nuraji. That fight should have been a DQ if I've ever seen a DQ. That was no chance that Kiefer Crosby should have been allowed to continue that fight. And Nuraji is just sort of given like a massive advantage. Even if he was trending towards winning that fight, you can't give him the advantage of letting him get a flatline KO, giving Kiefer Crosby 1 minute to recoup and then getting back into it. It has to be a DQ 100% of the time. But either way, Nuraji was going to win that fight. If you were watching the fight, there was no chance Kiefer Crosby was working out of that position. He was going to get elbow TKO'd. But I hate to see people win fights like that. At least the only positive I can draw from it is at least Nuraji is one of these guys that'll do anything to win. And I don't hate that, even if I don't like the cheating. Moving on to the next fight, we've got Sumaderji versus Kevin Borjas. I thought that Sumaderji would be able to get it done by decision by outpointing Kevin Borjas, and he did exactly that. The thing is that people have overrated Kevin Borjas since that win over Ronaldo Rodriguez, but I find the Ronaldo win very unimpressive. They act as though winning against Ronaldo Rodriguez, who made it close with Ode Osborne, is like a world beater feat to have, and even then his like close fight against Joshua Van, pre-Joshua Van, pre-Charles Johnson loss, people are talking about that like that makes him a future title contender. But that's a 20-year-old Joshua Van, an inexperienced Joshua Van. The thing is that Borjas just does have a simpleton's man's game. He doesn't feint his way in. He was letting Sumaderji just back up and evade all the strikes. He would clinch up and then hold Sumaderji there, holding him against the cage for like 2 minutes, getting no damage off. It just looked like he didn't really want to do everything to win this fight. And Sumaderji, as the fight went on, just started to school Kevin Borjas, making him look bad, making him miss big. And at that point, it was just like Kevin Borjas sort of gave up and didn't really push forward winging shots. He would wing like 3-4 in a row and then just go for the clinch, not really shoot for the takedown. Go for the clinch, hit some tappy knees, and that's it. Not a great performance from Kevin Borjas, and I think that people are going to remember this for next time, making sure to pick Sumaderji. Moving on to where the fights got pretty decent. Sergei Pavlovich versus Waldo Cortes-Acosta. This could be one of my darkest hours as an MMA YouTuber. I don't know why I picked Salsa Boy to win this one, the master jiggler. It seemed like a clear pick to pick Pavlovich, but my thinking around a Salsa Boy pick was that Pavlovich, post the Aspinall loss, is a different fighter. And I still believe in that sentiment, but I think that since we've got a more... My thinking around it was that since we've got a more inactive Sergei on the feet, that we would have a more active Waldo on the feet, which in hindsight, Waldo doesn't change anything in his game, doesn't matter who he's fighting against. And the power of Pavlovich sort of just dissuaded Waldo from coming forward and landing anything of value, or coming forward and actually wanting to throw anything of value. And I was expecting Waldo to come out there, shoot, land a couple of jabs, go for a couple of more takedowns, land a few leg kicks. But the thing is that Waldo just doesn't actually have the technique to out-technique Pavlovich. And I was sort of bamboozled into thinking he was a technical heavyweight just because he has a nice jab and a good leg kick. But realistically, that's all he has is a jab and a leg kick. I just didn't know it. I was bamboozled by the greatest Waldo. But every time the exchange wasn't a jab or a leg kick from Waldo, he would be throwing these overhands with his head staring at the floor. And the thing is that he just wasn't able to catch Pavlovich with anything at all that was meaningful. And Pavlovich was able to win by decision. But I will say, though, Pavlovich was just catching him every now and then waiting at range. Like, he wasn't really trying to finish Salsa Boy at any time. I will give Salsa Boy credit. His chin is, like, absolutely incredible. But I also don't think that Sergei fights like OG Sergei anymore. He would land a good shot, and then 3 minutes later, he would land another good shot. Whereas old Sergei would hurt you and then swarm straight away for the finish. Whereas nowadays, he basically just doesn't go for the finish at all. He tries to win certain exchanges of the fight and then just come back and, like, win a decision. And it's a very frustrating fight to watch that, just because you're expecting him to land something really big, And then he lands it, but then he just stands there at range fainting for the next 2 minutes. And the thing is, I think if he went for a couple more exchanges after a quicker, in quicker succession, he probably finishes Salsa Boy out there. And genuinely, I think Salsa Boy is probably one of the most annoying fighters to watch. Because his performances aren't nearly as good for him to be, having his tongue out, doing all of these emotes. His performance aren't nearly good enough for him to be doing that. So, I hate watching Waldo. I was sort of rooting for Waldo just because we're seeing a new Sergei that's sort of just fainting at range, not really attacking, not really pushing once he hurts you. But he was able to get it done by decision on Waldo. I thought it should have been a 30-27 decision. I didn't see Waldo doing well in any point of the fight. Moving on to the next one, though, we've got the co-main event, Aljamain Sterling versus Brian Ortega. This was a decent fight, but I can't remember the last time I was screaming for a guy to get a takedown. I think this fight was the fight where you see both of these guys are not nearly where they were peak mentally or physically. I think I picked Aljamain Sterling to get it done by decision, but as soon as the first 3 rounds went by, you could kind of see that these guys are mentally checked out from looking for a title. They're so scared of each other's grappling for the first 4 rounds that they just completely refused to bring it to the grappling aspects. They completely just didn't want it to be a grappling fight at all. And there's never been a guy that Aljamain Sterling hasn't wanted to take down. Same thing with Brian Ortega. There's never been guys that they've been scared to bring it to the floor with. But both of them, it seemed like they never wanted it to touch the ground until the last 2 rounds when Aljo wanted to keep it safe and Ortega needed a finish. The thing is that why isn't Ortega shooting takedowns? He's the one with all the front chokes. What stops him from shooting a takedown? And what stops Aljamain Sterling from working his grappling game in the clinch? What stops him from looking for the back like he usually does? I didn't understand the fight between them. I could understand, it could be energy management, anything like that. But you'd think that either guy would, in their prime, I pick either guy to look for the finish on each other. And I think in their prime, I think that Ortega probably catches Sterling because Sterling was outpointing Ortega through this entire fight, outpointing him on the back foot, catching him left, right, and center, evading the 1-2 of Ortega, the only thing that Ortega was throwing the entire shot. And Aljo was just on the back foot, pop-shotting him the entire time, but Ortega just at no point in the fight started cutting off the cage, and if he would land, he would barely push any further forward. And Aljo shouldn't be the much better striker if you're out there with him. Aljo's not known for his striking, and you can kind of see it in every fight. He's super open as he's coming in, as he's throwing his rear hand. He throws all these crazy techniques to sort of disguise the fact that he's got nothing behind it, but I think you see from both of these guys just a regressed fight between the two of them. I don't want to harp on this fight for that long because I really didn't see anything from either guy that impressed me, and I only really saw things that didn't impress me. Ortega getting hit in the eye with a punch, I can understand that can definitely hurt, and sometimes it can feel like a poke. But you see guys who are really, really determined guys. You don't see them have that reaction. Think of Charles Johnson early on the card. Charles Johnson's 35 years old. He's been unranked for a long time. And he's had a really unfortunate career. But Charles Johnson, as soon as he gets hit in the eye, he's surviving, he's pushing, he's not trying to blame it on an eye poke. He's doing everything he can to keep going. Think of Volk getting hit in the eye by Diego Lopez. That's the round where he lands the most punches. We're seeing Ortega get hit in the eye and try and gaslight Aljamain Sterling into thinking that he didn't actually hit him in the eye. You can see that Ortega no longer wants to bite down on the mouthpiece. And we're seeing an Ortega that's not as good as these other guys in the featherweight division. I hate that these two were matched up against each other because they're both now artificially in the top 7. Both of these guys should have got Steve Garcia and David Onama or some shit because I would pick everyone below them to beat them both. Hell, I think Pico smokes both of these guys out cold. I will say that. I picked against Pico. I thought Pico was going to get knocked out by Lerone Murphy. But I picked Pico to beat both of these guys. That's the state of them that I think that they're in. I wish that they put in Aljamain Sterling versus Steve Garcia or Steve Garcia versus Brian Ortega and then Gene Silva versus Aljamain Sterling. I hate that these two are artificially kept into the top 15 because of this fight. Like, if you're putting these two against younger guys, both of them are losing and both of them are in the bottom 15 of the rankings, where they should be, to be honest. I think neither of these guys look like top 5 opponents in the featherweight division at all. I'd pick Zalal to beat both of them. I'd pick Arnold Allen to beat both of them. I'd pick Gene Silva to beat both of them. I'd pick David Onama to beat both of them. I'd pick Steve Garcia to beat both of them. I'd pick Josh Emmett to beat Brian Ortega. Like, these guys are 1 foot out of the octagon, yet you're putting them both against each other. Like, back in the day, it used to be the business model of you put the old guys against the young guys to make the name off the old guys. But these old guys are just like spam fighting each other. It's like the lightweight division all over again. It annoys me so much. It's just like artificially ranking the top 7 best fighters in the world by just making them fight each other. It doesn't make any sense. Moving on to the main event, though. Johnny Walker versus Zhang Mingyang. Johnny Walker does it again. It was a great performance from Johnny. Can I say as well, he had such an impressive start. He just nailed his inner Hamzat and inner Dricus du Plessis. Goes for the fake glove touch. Instantly shoots under it. Gets sprawled. Puts himself into mount. And then gets ground and pounded for the next 2 minutes by Zhang Mingyang. It was a beautiful, beautiful start to the fight. But in all seriousness, it was a decent performance from Johnny Walker. I thought his game plan was actually pretty good, just to straight up run away for as long as possible. Because Zhang Mingyang showed it. He hasn't been out of the first round for his last 10 or 11 fights. So when we saw him out of the first round, it just randomly, he pulls up on screen and he's drenched in sweat and he's puffing and puffing. Zhang Mingyang, it was always going to be his weakness was his cardio. He hasn't been 3 rounds before. I think that Johnny Walker had a fantastic game plan of staying on the outside, hitting some leg kicks. And in round 2, he hurt Zhang Mingyang really, really bad with some leg kicks. Followed him to the ground and got the TKO finish. And it was a beautiful finish at that from Johnny Walker. I will say, I don't know how far Zhang Mingyang is going to go in the light heavyweight division. I think if you're going to be anywhere, you do have to beat Johnny Walker by first round KO. But then again, this could be the learning experience of him realizing, hey, you need to plan for going five rounds. Because, to be fair, I don't think that was a very high-paced fight at all. I do not think it was a high-paced fight. Yet he was still exhausted as soon as the second round started. And the thing is that against guys like Johnny Walker, you sort of do still need that athleticism to beat him. Johnny will be able to evade his shots until Johnny gets tired, until you can hit Johnny with some nice body shots and slow him down and then come over the top. And Zhang Mingyang, it showed that he didn't have the minerals to do that. And now he's been KO'd 4 times in his career. Not good. And I don't know how far he's going to go. I would, not confidently, but if he's fighting another guy in the rankings next fight out, I'm going to pick against him because this was not a good performance from him. He had some good moments in the first round, especially in the ground and pound with the elbows, and especially with his takedown defense and athleticism. But you can't have 1 round of takedown defense and athleticism and power, because a lot of these top 5 guys, top 10 guys in light heavyweight won't get finished. And to be honest, if you were going to finish anyone who's ranked in the first round, it was Anthony Smith and Johnny Walker. So we need to see something else from Zhang Mingyang very soon. Let me know what you thought of the card in the comment section below. As always, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.